Hello and welcome to part 37 of this Getting Started Android Development series brought to you by North Border Software. My name is Gary. In this set of tutorials we're going to look at databases and in particular SQLite. Databases allow you to define a structured table of data associated with a record, so it could be somebody's name, their age, date of birth, and that record will be associated with that person. We use SQLite. That differs mainly from the main SQL in that the main SQL is a client-server model. The SQLite is great for embedded applications, really, because it's an all-in-one entity. So that's what we're going to look at here. Now, I've done a lot of prep work here, primarily because there's really a lot of prep to do, and we've seen it all before, so I'm just going to talk through what we've done. I've obviously updated the Android manifest in the main activity file with the list view in as well. So it's all focused around this activity here, and this is the layout for the activity. So all I'm going to do is create a database of members, so it would be the member's name and their status, whether they're a gold, silver or bronze member. And I've just got a few buttons here, an update database, so any records here can be added into the database. We will want to view that database just by clicking that. That'll launch a new activity. And also, if we want to do some editing of entries, we need to identify a row ID. Now, we'll come to that later on, but this allows us to identify a record to edit, and also deleting an entry. So what I want to do is just leave you with a set of methods which you could apply in any app you're doing to do some basic database handling. So essentially we'll be creating that database, have the ability to open and close the database, add entries, edit entries and delete entries. So that's how we're going to go about doing this. So associated with this layout, I've got pretty much the basics done of the Java here, so I've just really pulled in all of the edit text that we need to work with, and the buttons, and I've set up the on-click listeners for those buttons. So there's nothing new here, we've seen this already. You can download this code off our website if you want to look at this in more detail. I set up a switching case to handle the clicks, and there's nothing in here at the moment, so we'll fill these in as we need to. So the other thing we want to do is show the database. So here's a very basic activity here. I've just really found the idea of a simple text view. That text view is going to hold the database itself. This is the layout associated with it. Just says members database, and we'll display the records here. We'll just use this single text view. We'll construct a string, and we'll put some new line escape characters in that string, just so we can print each record on a new line. So I'm keeping it really basic, because there's quite a lot to cover. So the other thing I've done is created this blank class here. It's just all I need to do is all it is just a basic class. I've called it members database, and there's actually nothing here. And what we're going to focus on in this tutorial now is to build a framework for the database. So I need to define some constants and variables which are going to help us work with our database. So you can see here this doesn't extend any activity. We don't need to do that. What we're going to do in this SQLite activity is call on some of the methods we're going to define in this class here and use them. So first of all, let's just create a few I guess static strings and some variables as well. So first of all, I'm going to type private, and I want something for the database name. So it would be a string, and it'll be we'll call it, actually first of all we'll call it key row ID equals, okay, just to explain what's going on here. Our records in the database are going to be identified by a row, so what I've defined here is really a constant variable, if that makes sense, something that's never going to change. Private, because it's going to be just used within this class. Final and static, just nail down the variable. And I called it string, and it's called key row ID, and it's underscore ID. Okay, and what we need to do now is I'll just put it underneath this one. We'll do something for the database name as well. Private, final, static, and this will be a string as well. And it'll be key name, and we're going to set that to a value of we'll just call it name. So that's something, a reference to the person's name, and we want one for status as well. I'll just call that status. Okay. Now we want a similar thing for the database name itself. That's something we're going to reference later on. I'll just call this database name. I'm going to call the database members. That will never change, so that's why again it's private, final, static. And a database is made up of tables. You can have numerous tables, but we're just going to have one table here, and we're going to call it members table, and it's just going to contain the name and the status. So again, we'll just do a similar thing here. I'll just call this database table. By convention, when we're defining these constants, we use capitalization for the constant name, and I'll just call this members table. Okay. And what we need as well is a database version. And this will be an integer, and we'll just call this database version. It's just something we've got to use in the database definition, and we're going to set that equal to 1. Okay. Now I'm going to define a couple more variables here. These may not make a lot of sense at the moment, but they'll become apparent as we use them. So we might as well get everything defined for the moment. Okay, so we're going to type private final, and it will be a context. I'll just call that context. Okay, so we're not using the static keyword here because it's not a variable used within this class. This is an object, so we don't use the static keyword. Now this is throwing an error out. If you go down here, what we need to do is add a constructor parameter, because this is part of our class constructor. Now what this constructor does, there's some concepts which are actually quite difficult to explain in Java, but become apparent when we use it later on. We're going to call methods which we're going to define in this class from this SQLite activity class. Now the way we're going to do that is actually reference members database Java dot whatever the method is. and this is really where the constructor helps us. So we can actually place some code in here. The code will could be executed before the coding method is executed itself. So really, for now, you probably just got to go along with it. When we access these methods later on, it should become a little bit more clear as to what we're actually doing with the constructor. A context has different meanings in native Java and Android itself. Again, it's a very difficult concept to grasp hold of, but essentially it's the whole environment, and the context is part of the environment you're looking at. So context could be an activity, and we have used this where we've just been typing the keyword this, so we're trying to execute some code for this activity, and that is the context. Again, it's very difficult, so for now probably just need to go ahead with this, and it's something we can practice. As you practice more, I guess these concepts start to come home, but they are very difficult explaining words, and you can look on the internet and you'll be just as confused after reading a lot of the explanations that are out there. Anyway, I've added the constructor in, and that's just got rid of that error. So I'm just going to define a couple more variables. So be private, and it'd be what we're going to do is create a database helper. So it's DbHelper. I'm just going to call this database helper. Okay, so this is generating an error as well. What we need to do is you'll get this little light bulb. We're going to create an inner class called database helper. So let's create that there, and what this needs to do then, what we type here is extends, and it'll be SQLite, and we're looking for open helper. So there we are. Okay, so again we've got another error here because it's going to ask us to implement some methods which we're going to use. So let's implement those methods. Okay, and I'll talk about these in a minute. There's just one more variable which we need to take care of. So it'll be private, and it'll be SQLite database, and we're going to call this members database. Just make that a lower case there. Alright, okay, so we've still got an error here which we need to get rid of. So what we need to do is create a constructor matching super, and we'll add this in here. Now we can do a little bit tidying up here. So all we actually need here is the constant, so we can actually delete that. And now we can just actually get rid of these errors here by putting in some of the variables which we defined earlier. So the name is going to be database name, factory is going to be null, and the version will be database version. Okay, so that's our basic framework done. Just to explain this on create and upgrade methods with this database helper, essentially when we're going to make a call to access this database, first of all we're going to check to see if it's available. If it's available, we'll call the on upgrade method. We're going to do some actions with that, so we need to put some code in here, and then we're going to call the on create to generate the database. So if it doesn't exist, the on create is called. If it exists, the on upgrade method is called first of all, and we need to do some action with that, and that's what we're going to do in the next tutorial. I think there's been quite a lot going on here, so we basically created the framework. We're going to create the database in the next tutorial, and some basic methods to open and close that, and then we'll go on to do the adding of the entry and the editing, etc. So we'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.